Good afternoon readers, it's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf and I'm here for another short review. So today I'm going to be reviewing the 2022 Booker Prize winning Seven Moons of Maali Almeida, very deserved Booker Prize winner I would say, by Shehan Karunatilaka. So this is a journey into the afterlife in the middle of Sri Lanka's brutal civil war. So it's set in 1990, reflecting on experiences throughout the 1980s. And the main character of Maali Almeida spent his life photographing atrocities in the war. And after his death, he has 7 nights to decide what to do next and to figure out how much influence he actually has over the world of the living. So my reviews at the moment are what went well, even better if, and surprising strength. So I'll start with what went well, and I don't know where to start with what went well because I love this book so much. So I'll start with the beginning, which was very, very strong. I was immediately drawn right into the story and into the fantastical sort of atmosphere of the afterlife world, which is built out of ghosts, helpers, ghouls and demons, and they all live kind of on top of the world of the living. The world building of how that all fits together was exquisite, and I found the details of things like how spirits could move about and the different kind of stages that they might go through in terms of how their appearance might change. I found that fitted together very well. And I was constantly intrigued by the idea of the light, which is kind of like the end goal at the end of his 7 moons if he manages to sort of make it to the light. There was also a very good explanation of the situation in Sri Lanka at the time. I was able, as somebody who's got very limited knowledge of the background of that conflict, I was able to read this without Googling anything. Afterwards I did look up a few things just because I wanted a little bit more context, but I didn't feel like I couldn't follow the story because of the setting. I found Maali as a character himself really interesting, his own journey before and after his death, so before we get through sort of memories that kind of gradually come back to him, and after we obviously see it played out at the time. That was compelling and multifaceted. So Karunatilaka found a lot of time to explore Maali's work and the vivid sort of the images of the war crimes that he witnessed. I would say this is a book for grown-up readers, just because of the darkness of the Civil War kind of context, and you know, Maali's own sort of experiences in that. His sexuality and his experience of loving men while having to hide those relationships, and also the side of his character that was a real gambler and a risk taker, and that in itself is kind of central to who he is, and it's so important to the way that he handles the short time that he has in the afterlife. So I thought that was captured really, really well. So he believes that the pictures that he's taken could have the power to end the war, but he also sees there's a risk to his loved ones if they're involved in bringing those photos to light, and a risk to himself if he spends too long in his 7 moons focusing on his photographs without thinking about, you know, what's going to happen next to him in terms of being surrounded by demons and dark figures. So even better if, these are really, really tiny niggles. I'm just mentioning them kind of to round out the review, but I did feel that the pace went off a little bit in the middle of the book. There was some time around sort of the 3rd or 4th moon that I just felt a little tiny bit less engaged and less gripped by what was going on. There was also, particularly in that phase, there was a lot of dialogue without dialogue markers. So I found myself having to go back and try and work out who was saying which thing, because I just lost track at times. And sometimes there were quite a few characters and I didn't always remember exactly the names and characteristics of all of the different characters. So yeah, that just affected my ability to follow that dialogue. A surprising strength then, so I normally view second person narration to be a bit of a gimmick, and present tense I generally find frustrating, but wow, I would say Karunatilaka really knows what he's doing. His use of the second person present tense throughout this book was so strong, and it really, really fitted with the surreal experience that Maali was having and the surreal kind of world that he was creating. So yeah, it worked perfectly for this book. So that was a real surprise to me, because when I read the first sentence I was like, oh no, but then I very swiftly realised that it was done for a very good reason. So the book that I would most compare this to, that sprang to mind for me, was Penguin Lost by Andriy Kurkov, so that's the second book in the Death and the Penguin kind of duology. The reason why that one sprang to mind is they're both kind of dealing with conflict, dealing with not necessarily good people, but normal people who somehow get drawn into conflict, and like the impact that can have on people, this idea of like cremating bodies and things and getting kind of like drawn into the mechanisms of state brutality. Both of them have that aspect. So yeah, so if you've read this, I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts, or if you've got recommendations for similar books, I would love to hear about it. Just let me know in the comments, and thank you very much for watching.